Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Gaming Podcast. Once again, I am Bradley, and joining me this week... No, before we get there, I've got to address you directly. I've got to address him directly, okay? I'm not trying to pull you, even though I would like to. Yes, you are really fit. You are fit, but my gosh, don't you know it, don't you, Stu?
I do. It's the way that I live my life. I just try and influence people with my beauty the entire time.
Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't work, but, I give it a go.
Yes. It was come to the stark realisation that we know now, though, the Streets done 2 songs last night that I've heard of. And I went, there's my intro.
What's your other one? Is it Dry Your Eyes, mate?
Yes, that's the only other one I've heard them do.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, I've been struggling for an intro all week. I don't plan these. So anyone's listening, I don't plan these. Stu has no idea what's coming.
Nope.
No, none at all. We don't rehearse any of it, in all fairness. But I kind of look for influences throughout the week of what could be my intro, and I was really struggling. We was in bed, and Lo wanted to ask for a song on the Amazon Echo. I won't say it because she'll boot up. Not Lo, the thingy. And she got the wrong one. She asked for Hey There Delilah by the Streets. I was like, that's not who does it. I went, but let's do Dry Your Eyes, mate. And she went, oh, did they ever do anything else? And I went, I don't know. And then we listened to it and went, oh my God, yes, that one. I know what I'm introducing tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I like that album that he did, the first one. I liked it. And I can't remember any of the songs off it except the famous ones.
You say album, more like an audio book.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
I mean, my intro was probably more musical than the Streets album.
Oh, shots fired.
No, I joke, but there's a lot of talking. They do talk a lot of their lyrics.
They do.
I like it. It's charming.
Yes. It's very particular. You wouldn't just... Well, I'm speaking for other people now, but you probably wouldn't pack your record collection with that kind of thing. But having the odd one there, here and there is fine.
And if they made money from that, then fair enough. Fair play to them, is what I say.
Too right. Man's got to earn.
Yeah, it's niche. Talking of niche, do you know what else can be niche?
What?
Movies. No, video games. Oh. Video games. They're like movies, but you press buttons. So what buttons have you been pressing this week, Stu?
I've been pressing a lot of buttons, but the main sort of ones of interest were, first off, Forza Motorsport 7, the PC version, and specifically the PC version because it's been out on Game Pass for ages, and I had to go with it on my One X, and thought it was all right, not all that bothered, but I decided to have a go with it on my PC, and that means I can use the wheel. And with the wheel, it's like a completely different game. I mean, which sounds like, well, duh. But I was talking to my friend Mike the other day, who was saying, he played Forza Horizon 4 with the wheel, and it was rubbish compared to the pad. And I was like, oh, yeah, actually, I think I agree with that. So they don't all work with the wheel very well, but 7 really does. And it's just been a fantastic experience. It's been kind of somewhere between, the Ferrari game on the Dreamcast and probably, I don't know, Race Driver Grid, perhaps. Just those were the sort of feels I was getting from it. And I just really like it. The difference in the cars and the weight distribution and speed, sense of speed, it's just great. And, the only problem I have with it is the problem I have with a lot of racing games is that I've played the tracks just so many times, like Laguna Seca and Suzuka and just all of it. You've just played them all a billion times. But that said, it's just fantastic.
I've never really got into 7. I think my main foray into the Forza series was probably Forzas 2, 3 and 4. I used to do forum races and things like that. And then for whatever reason, I think I just bounced, because I'd lost my wheel or had to sell my wheel. I stopped playing like the proper sim races.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but they are good. They do what they're meant to do. But I still think playing them like in single player, even with a wheel, they feel dull. They don't have the excitement that it does either in multiplayer with friends, where everyone's taking it seriously enough that it's competitive, but not so seriously that if you make a mistake, you get like called out for all sorts. But also, you're not full of people just trying to ram you off the road for the sake of it. And that's where the excitement comes in. But I just find them very sterile in single player.
I'm kind of the opposite, really. I don't generally like multiplayer experiences. I'm not very competitive at sports and stuff like that. I prefer things that are cooperative. And yeah, that it doesn't suit me. But I understand what you mean. Getting people together with like minds and playing something is not always the best experience, but it's often the best experience, especially with like a repetitive task type game, like driving.
I would often finish in like forum races near the back of the pack, except for Suzuka. Suzuka, I win.
Fair enough.
That's my track. That's the one I know. I'll go into that in any racing game and perform because I know that track so well.
Yeah.
Mainly down to the aforementioned Ferrari F355 challenge on Dreamcast.
Yeah. Which does come back to what I was saying about it's a shame that there aren't more made up tracks. It's the problem that they have with with FIFA, with football games, people wanting, I want all the latest players, and it's like, well, I'm not bothered really, just give me a load of randoms with stats, and it's like, just give me a load of tracks that you've built yourself that I've never seen before, instead of just having the same ones over and over. But I think I'm probably in the minority on that one.
I don't know. I've always argued, not always argued, but I've often thought that maybe they should do like track editors, proper track editors in like the Gran Turismos and your Forza Motorsports and your R Factors and things like that. But one of the things I noticed is when you've got anything that's got an editor in something real life, so you look at like the PGA Tour games or the golf club as they were known before, what generally happens, you get a few test ones that people have done that are generally rubbish, and then someone somewhere's done a perfect recreation of a real life course that's not in the game officially already. Yeah. And it's the same with tracks. I think people try and just go, okay, this track isn't in there, I'll make it, and that's what you get. And they get played more than the fantasy tracks, which is a shame. But I agree with you. I like user-generated content on stuff like that. It's why Trials, I think, for a period was so good, because the user-generated stuff was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get what you mean. I agree to a degree, but I think it's always hard then to slot those into a proper like season or progression. It's just like, play this one-off track, and it's like, that's fine, but I want the developers to have made them all. I want it like Ridge Racer. It's like there's no reason why having an arcade driving game means you create fake tracks for it and you create a sim and they're all real. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like, have real tracks in Ridge Racer and have completely made up tracks in your sim. Why be so rigid about it? So, I'd like to see the developers being tasked with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, it is a shame because with Forza and Gran Turismo, I find that either the AI in it are either too good and they just bugger off because you haven't got a good enough car, or you're too good and there's no race. It's just time trialing. They never seem to balance the races properly because you can kind of upgrade your car and go, right, it's better than everyone else now, so off I go. Yeah. It's why I really prefer the likes of Grid. Even though they're a bit more, not even arcadey, they're Simcade ones, aren't they? But they're all designed to keep all the racing together. It's why I prefer the Formula One games to like Forza as well, because you get a natural sense of the proper balance and everything like that. And honestly, I still don't think for a single player experience, the original TOCA touring cars, TOCA 2, and the story-based TOCA Race Driver have ever been bettered in terms of here's the excitement of the racing. You actually feel like you're in a battle in every single race and that there's consequences for your actions and so on. I honestly do not think they've ever been bettered.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think what the gap is, the problem that they've not really solved is you want the AI to be, flawed. You want them to make human error, because what they do is they take the corners perfectly. They drive mechanically, ironically enough. And it's like, well, that doesn't happen in real life. You know, you want to see an AI driver who just becomes amazing and does everything right. And you're like, oh, beat me fair and square. But you also want to see those who take corners too fast and spin out and, you know, ram into the back of other players and trash both of their runs and stuff like that. And you just don't. It's just, oh, well, you know, the AI always takes these corners perfectly. If you knock down the difficulty, they just drive slower.
So, I mean, someone should make a board game called it, like, I don't know, Dragsters and Drafters or something like that, where you go and every time you hit a corner, it's a dice roll that decides, do you take it perfectly? Do you maybe get not the right angle, or do you make silly mistakes and stuff like that, with obviously more chance of getting it taken well, 1 in 20 chance of taking it perfectly, or 1 in 20 chance of spinning out, that kind of thing. It doesn't feel like there's that in a video game. It doesn't feel like there's enough RNG for the opposition.
Yeah, I get you, yeah. You're right.
Yeah, whereas I think if you had more like every corner was a dice roll for the AI, it'd feel more real.
Well, you'd be pleased to hear that there is a board game like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now. Formula or something, I think, but a German
There's Robo
game.
Rally, isn't there, as well?
There is Robo Rally, yeah.
But I don't know. It'd be interesting. Maybe I don't know, a roguelike dice roll based racing game on PC. Someone could do that.
Why not? I think, you know, it's worth an experiment with it, see if it's any fun.
Lewis Hamilton's RPG dice adventure.
I would buy that for the title alone, even though I wouldn't.
I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan.
Oh, fair play.
Nigel Mansell's, there we go.
Nigel Mansell. Oh, wow. Go back 30 years.
Yeah, but he had that car was iconic, though. He's blue, yellow, camel, Formula 1, Renault, Williams was, that was iconic to me.
Well, that's the problem. The branding for cigarettes is fantastic. It's just that it's for a terrible product.
It's fantastic. You know, it works because it made me want to smoke when I was younger.
I loved the John Player special car, the black and gold.
Oh, yeah.
I was obsessed.
Yeah. They were iconic. The Rothmans, when they ended up, they Williams switched from Camel to Rothmans, and so did I.
Oh, how manipulated we are by these things. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the Benson Hedges, see, they got creative. Obviously, you had countries that started banning cigarette advertising, but it wasn't the world over, so cigarette advertising was still massive. Kids today won't understand just how big tobacco advertising was. But you had the Jordan, which was sponsored by Benson and Hedges, that when they went to countries that banned tobacco advertising, done something else. So, like, I remember the one where they had the Hornet on the card, just called it Buzzing and Hornets instead of Benson and Hedges and stuff like that. They got so creative with it. I don't think the cars these days, they look nice, but they're not creative. There's no creativity. The only iconic car still left on the grid for me is the Ferrari.
Is it I remember what, you see, I'm not into motorsport, but I remember there's is there a Red Bull one that's kind of green and blue and yellow and got the Bull logo on it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's the same. Anything Red Bull. I wouldn't call it iconic though. It's just, it's Red Bull. It's like that with all their stuff. It's you know, even the Ferrari. If someone asked me to name to point out name a Ferrari livery from days past, or like any time in Formula 1, I'll go, the Marlboro Ferraris, because the red and white. It was so iconic.
Yeah, it was.
It's the same as like when. I can't listen to, because of Formula 1, but I know we've gone way off subject from Forza 7, but it's an old game. No one cares.
True. It's true.
But I still cannot listen to the German national anthem with it finishing as the German national anthem finishes. It needs the Italian national anthem to follow it, because most of my formative years of watching Formula 1 was watching my sporting hero, Michael Schumacher, win. So you had the German followed by the Italian.
Right, yeah.
Like most
just naturally
races.
Flows into it.
Yeah. It's like listening to Paradise by the Dashboard Lights by Meatloaf, where the the final third of that song is just completely different to the first two thirds.
Oh, very good.
Jesus Christ, my brain goes off in places.
Yeah, and when your brain goes off into places, sometimes you want to play a game that suits that mood. So what game have you been playing, Segway?
well, it's a segue, and my brain doesn't go off in places with this one, ironically enough. I have been playing a game called Deepest Chamber. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. It's a rogue.
I can see where this is going already.
Go on. What do you think I've been playing?
It's a roguelike card game with RNG, blah, 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 indie title.
Yeah, you pretty much covered my notes there. It's a roguelike deck builder. Right, so roguelike deck builders, I do enjoy them. I'm not going to lie, but I think between sort of like Slay the Spire, Cardaclysm, Cardpocalypse, Monster Train, numerous others, I think I've played most of what they have to offer now. So it's very hard to find one that comes in and does something new. And therein lies the issue with Deepest Chamber. It's a good game, but all I can really say about it is if you've played Slay the Spire, there you go. There's your game. You get what the game is just by saying Slay the Spire.
Yeah.
Same sort of progression. So you sort of start and you go through various chambers in this one. And then you've got these doors that you have to choose to go through, which choose your path. Some might have you doing sort of like just normal bog standard battles. Some might have you taking on elites. Some might offer you some kind of reward or some kind of punishment, depending on what you do. After every round, you get a reward and you get to pick a new card or not pick a new card if you don't want to build your deck up, etc., etc. Progressing as you go to get better and better and better. Yeah. Exactly the same as Slay the Spire. Looks a bit different. It looks more inspired graphically by Darkest Dungeon. But this is why I want to talk about it more than anything. It's kind of got PS2 era 3D graphics for some of the models.
Right.
And I mean that in a good way. So they're not that low polygon PS1 era, but they're not that kind of weird, horrible, uncanny valley of PS3 era models. It's got that PS2 aesthetic, and I really, really like it. You get to see your enemies and stuff, but your representation, you kind of get various different builds that you can do and abilities based on what cards now get. You don't get to see yourself or your character, but you see the opposition. It works really well. It's got really good solid card mechanics to it, and it has a few subtle differences to Slay the Spire that makes it, I think, well worth a go if you've like rinsed Slay the Spire for everything it's worth. So what you've got in there is you've got some very interesting card types, but what I really liked was the block system. So in Slay the Spire, if you put some block cards down, you'll get like 4 shield, for example, added. And then you add another one, you might get 7 shield for that turn alone. At the end of that turn, if it isn't damaged by your enemy, it goes. So it just it disappears. In here, it doesn't. It decays. So if you put on 10 block in your go and the enemy decides instead it's going to buff itself and doesn't do it, you don't lose that 10 block. You might lose 1 or 2, so it decays over time, which I found a much better mechanic, because it meant what I could do was actually use blocking as a viable tool. So if I knew or felt that my enemy was going to be doing some buffs or doing some some healing or something like that for a couple of rounds, I could build my block up. So when it then tries to hit me with a bigger attack, I've got enough block that it's not just going to wipe me out. So I felt it offered something that bit different without having to sort of get the special abilities that allow you to keep block for that round. So it does enough different that it's worth playing, but apart from that, it doesn't do enough for me to stand out that I would say go out and get it. Even if you're still playing Slay the Spire or Monster Train or whatever, go out and get it. But if you're just after more of the same, does everything pretty much spot on. I think it's become such a crowded genre now that I don't know what can be done to stand out.
Yeah, it needs to be put aside for a few years, I think, doesn't it? And then some revolutionary come along in a few years' time and go, oh, I've got this new mechanic I can add to it that will revolutionise it. But it's just iterating on the same thing over and over, which is not good for most people.
No. But what I will say in Deepest Chambers' favour, I had a little look at their marketing and stuff like that. They're not coming out with a, hey, check out our game, it changes the world. Oh my God, we're so different. It's pretty much, I get the feeling they've gone, hey, just more of the same, innit? And that's fine. I don't mind more of the same if that's what you tell me it is.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Because, when you get a game comes out and goes, oh my God, it's a Halo beta, or oh my God, it's a Mario killer and stuff like that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Go, yeah, do you know what? We liked Mario, so we thought we'd do something like it. We liked Halo, so we thought we'd do a sci-fi based FPS. So, yeah, just lean into it. I'll just go, look, we just liked the game and wanted to make our own.
Yep,
that's fine.
That's fair enough. Yeah, they can do that. I won't buy them, but they can do it.
No, I will.
There you go. Cool.
So, moving on from cards, I'm expecting you haven't played a roguelike deck builder.
Funnily enough, no. I've gone nowhere near any of them, and for good reason, because I just stuff like that just really doesn't click. I've tried really, really hard, but it's good. It's good to know your own taste and to know when to just stay away. It doesn't mean that they're crap. It just means that I don't personally like them, and I've been playing something that could not be further away from that. It literally couldn't, because that is Donkey Konga 2 on the GameCube. So. For those who don't know,
it's a roguelike drumming game.
Yes, a roguelike drumming game. Oh no, please don't, because somebody will do that now. But I don't want that to happen.
You're telling me if someone made a roguelike drumming game using the Donkey Konga bongos, you wouldn't play it?
Maybe just so that we could talk about it on here. But I've got Donkey Konga Jungle Beat, which is the platformer.
Yeah.
That uses it. I can't stand it. It's a good idea, and I applaud them for trying it, but I just could not stand it. I really couldn't. But Donkey Konga 2, the regular, beating a drum to the sounds of the music is fantastic. Like Taika no Tatsuji, if pronounced correctly.
Yes. The drumming one.
The drumming one.
With the little weird drum dogs.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got it. But so for those who don't know it, you have a pair of bongos. I've been playing with my bongos all week. So they're
got a lovely pair of bongos.
Oh, thank you very much. And they're just what sort of obviously they as you'd understand they're a set. So there's two. But what makes it stand out a bit is that there's a microphone in the middle because it's Nintendo, and it picks up claps. When you clap your hands like the DS and other of their devices does. Mm-hmm. So when you play in the game, when you're matching the patterns like you do with any rhythm action game, you can do so you have to tap on both in rhythm, you have to tap on them individually, you have to do those syncopated fast beats as well, and you can do them either with both. And sometimes you have to do them only on one, but you also do these claps in between, so it's tapping along and then clapping, and just having that little difference of doing the clap in between, adds a dimension to it, and it never takes it past being a very basic game, but it does make it more fun. Although your hands absolutely kill by the end of it, even though the sensitivity of the microphone's really good. Just the act of clapping is surprisingly wearing on the hands. So you can't play it in massive long sessions. It's more of a short burst game. But, it's really good. It's great fun.
Yeah, no, I played that when I was, not when I was younger, a few years ago, when I had access to a GameCube. It is a fun game. Unfortunately, all I was trying to do there was resist making a joke about having the clap, because you said the clap way too many times, especially after playing with your bongos.
Yeah.
I deserve an award for not jumping in.
You kind of do. That's very restrained.
I know. But yeah, no, it's an interesting game. I can't do rhythm games at all. I Space Channel 5 couldn't play it. The Elite Beat Agents enjoyed it, but it was rubbish. All stuff like that. I can't play the Crypt of the Necro Dance or Cadence of Hyrule, even though I've bought them. I've bought Crypt of the Necro Dancer 3 times. I don't know why I can't play it. But yeah, Donkey Konga 2, or whatever, the GameCube ones that I played, I think because they are so simple, I got on with them more than any others.
Yeah.
And just having the physical drum, I think, really helps. It adds something. I know we went through a phase where everything was a plastic toy added to it, or plastic peripheral. But I think there's something about those bongos that they felt good. Like my son, when we went to Spain, got a bongo off the market, like a single bongo, and the quality of that, like a proper bongo, compared to what that Nintendo wasn't far off. Apart from the fact they were plastic around the edges and this one was wooden, the actual material on top felt very similar to a proper bongo, and I think that really did help. Whereas like the guitars and stuff in Rock Band and Guitar Hero, they're not guitars, you're still just pressing buttons. Whereas this, you're doing what the actual act is.
Yes, yeah, it does make a big difference. Yeah, I like the way you see that. I find the Guitar Hero stuff and Rock Band really clever, and I really love those because they kind of get a compromise between actually playing the instrument and just, in inverted commas, playing a video game.
Yeah.
You know, in a really, really good way that makes this hybrid. I think if anyone tried to argue that it was like playing a real guitar, they'd be talking out of their what's-it. But, you know, just that the kind of the feel and the actions, it's like, you know, it's imitating them in a really, really good way. But, yeah, the bongo thing, you're actually playing the bongos. You are genuinely doing what it is that you would do in real life. Just like with Taika Waititi's in. Blah, blah, blah. That's a tough one. So, you know, that's got a real... But, you know, pleasure to it in and of itself, kind of like using a steering wheel for games. But yeah, no, I've got a big thing about using peripherals like that because they're really part of a gaming experience that has gradually sort of faded out. And I'll be talking about it a lot more in the coming weeks because I've got a couple of projects on the go that are about that. So
please tell me you've got Beatmania.
I haven't got Beatmania. I have like, lots of opportunities to get it, but I've not actually got it. So, yeah. Have you played Beatmania?
Yes. When I worked in a video shop, we got it in for rental, and I played a lot of that behind the desk on quiet mornings. I know it's probably not a great game to some people, but it's my favourite plastic toy peripheral game out there.
Yeah, some of them really click with you. I really loved, the Rock Band stuff from Guitar Hero. I loved the Taiko game. I love Donkey Konga with the bongos, and I really liked from the sort of the pressy button ones. A big fan of what's called Theatre of the Final Fantasy. Really enjoyed that because it's good, and also it's got all the Final Fantasy music in it. And also, what else did I really love? Guitaru Man, of course.
Of course.
And Cool Toon, which is a Japanese-only Dreamcast game that's in a similar vein to Guitaru Man. And, really fantastic. So, yeah, some of them are just fantastic stuff.
Fair enough. So, from playing music and beating your bongos, I've been doing something a bit different to that.
Go on.
I've been defending my garden.
From
rot. I've been playing Garden Story, which is a game I never expected. Garden Story, I expected essentially Stardew Valley, a clone of Stardew Valley,
right,
or Golf Story, or something like that. It was like, especially it has the same pixel art, top-down pixel art style. So I was expecting like a farming sim type thing, but using gardens. I was like, oh look, you're trying to differentiate yourself. Yeah, no. What you've actually got is an action-adventure game with a heavy focus on combat.
No, I did not expect that either.
No. So you take on the role of Concord, who is the guardian of the grove. And you set you out quite linear, blah, 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 stuff happens. And then you kind of go back and you're then put in charge with restoring and protecting the village, town, whatever it was. I can't remember. And basically the main gameplay loop is a section of defend, build, and forage. So you're defending with combat against the rot and various different enemies. You need to build up the village and everything to sort of like get it back to where it was. But you also need to go out and gather resources to help you build. Stuff like that. It reminds me, the combat focus of it, but with the other stuff, reminds me a lot of Atomic Crops, which is a game I've spoke about on here before, and I absolutely adored. Now, what I will say from the outset, preferred Atomic Crops. Just going to say that. I think because it was more laser focused on what it was doing than Garden Story is, and I'll come to why in a second. But what I liked about Garden Story is it had clear signposting of its objectives. Now, with a lot of games that have this, such as Stardew Valley, which is obviously excellent, the Story of Seasons games, Harvest Moon in the past, and stuff like that, even Animal Crossing, is that I never think the objectives are clearly signposted enough at times.
Yeah.
Which I think can become an issue. But this has very clear signposting in terms of this is what you need to do today. And you kind of get your tasks and you go and do them. And if you do them, you get your sort of like rewards for it and do it. But if you fail, you can't do them again for that day. And it goes on and goes on. And if you keep failing, you kind of get to a point where it becomes very difficult to complete the game. It doesn't make that clear to start with, but overall it does. You kind of get the idea that you can't keep failing because you can't repeat anything. Once you've died or failed in a task, that's it, gone. But overall, I think the signposting is really good. For someone like me with ADHD, it's really good because it gives me a clear indication daily of go and do this. It doesn't build them up, so you're not then left with maybe 18 different tasks to try and keep on top of. It's 3 per day. Don't do them. They're gone. Really good. Really like that. Really difficult game. Mm-hmm. The bosses are really interesting to start with, and you have various different ways of taking them down. But then, unfortunately, as you get further, they're more just the same, which is a bit disappointing. But they are difficult and satisfying to beat, which is really, really good. And in it, you find these memories, quote unquote memories, which you can unlock, and they give you various different ability tweaks. And it's quite cleverly implemented. It works within the story of the game, which I found really, really good. So the big issue, and the reason I mentioned sort of like why I preferred Atomic Crops to this is I think because I went in expecting something Stardew Valley-like, and it tries to implement that as best it can. Some of the building and the foraging stuff and the management side of it feels a bit tacked on, but still integral to the game at the same time, which is really odd in itself. Whereas Atomic Crops, the individual elements worked in that gameplay loop where you kind of like done this, done that, fought, went back, done this, done that, fought, back, and repeated that. So that loop was there the entire time. You would upgrade, but that loop was still there, off you go. Wasn't quite the same with this. Now, what that makes for is, because of the Stardew Valley feel and comparing it to Atomic Crops, I think I wanted more from this game than what it ever decided it was going to offer. And it's more on me that I found these little flaws with the game, just minor little flaws that didn't ruin the experience. It didn't destroy it. I still enjoyed it, but got me irritated at times, which is a shame because it does, looking at it all logically, it does everything as it should and makes a really good game. But I just think the look of it, having played Atomic Crops first and expecting something completely different, it wasn't the wow experience that it possibly could have been to maybe someone going into this sort of game for the first time.
Fair enough. Yeah, sounds like it's, again, fairly solid, but not completely exceptional, which, like you say, it's okay. But, you might take or leave. Yeah.
Yeah, but it brings to an interesting point of where indie games are at the moment, and I'm going to talk about another game afterwards again that's kind of falls into this, is indie games have got to a point now where I think people are expecting too much from them.
Yeah.
If you look at various discussions of Game Pass, for example, and all the indies are going on there, like The Ascent got an absolute bashing because it wasn't changing the world. It was like, but it's a fantastic game. I really enjoyed it. There's something about it. For me, it's a special game. It's right up there still for one of my games of the year. But that's me. That's my personal opinion. I get that others won't like it. I don't expect everyone to like every single game. That's fine. But there seems to be, if an indie game's being built up and it doesn't meet expectations, then everyone will pile in. Oh, it's not good enough. 12 Minutes is another example. Apparently, it's quite a Marmite game, and it doesn't live up to some of the hype. I've not played it yet, so I'm not going to comment too much on that.
Yeah.
Then with AAA games, people seem to be more forgiving of those. It almost seems to be there's like a role reversal in how people look at games. We can forgive the game that's gone like $6 million over budget and force people into sort of like stupidly horrible working conditions to try and get out a buggy piece of mess. We can forgive that. And you're getting people going, is it time to forgive CD Projekt Red for Cyberpunk? No, it's really not. But I can forgive an indie game that's maybe the developers have got a bit overexcited with what they're trying to do, and it doesn't quite live up to that. As I said, you look back at just this earlier in this podcast where I spoke about Deepest Chamber. It's not changing the world. It is more of the same, but that's fine. But I get a feeling if this was launched day one on Game Pass, you'd get this isn't Slay the Spire. Well, why would you? It's not as good. And it's frustrating now. Indie games seem to be having to either hit it perfectly out the park or they're considered failures, which is a shame.
Yeah, I suppose possibly, like you say, because they're on Game Pass and it's such a big, it's such a big content repository and there's such a big deal made about, we curate this, list and they're the ones that we selected and stuff, and they've got that visibility now. There's kind of like, well, you've got no excuse. They should be good. It's like, well, should they? They don't have to be brilliant. They're still from indie creators. And the other bit might just be because there's that bias of, oh well, if you're an indie creator, you can create whatever you want. You're not restricted by all these, what the publisher wants and all of that, and trying to fit in with the market. It's a passion project. It's like, well, for some people, but not all, not by any means. They've still got to make some money. They've got to throw in stuff that's going to appeal to people so that they actually buy it.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about flawed games?
I play most of the ones I play are flawed games because the only ones that are polished tend to be the ones where they've already kind of found all the pitfalls and they've ironed them all out and smoothed them all over and they're just iterating on that. And I say it's still a big deal, but it's why I don't really bother with AAAs. It's not because I have any strong dislike for the games necessarily. It's just I look at them and I'm kind of like, ooh, that's a bit bland. I've played all those things.
It's just homogenised now, isn't it?
Yeah, homogenised. Yeah.
Whereas I like games that try and do something. They're flawed. The Ascent is flawed. I'm not going to deny The Ascent is flawed, for example, but the overall experience is great. And I can forgive the flaws.
Yeah.
I can't forgive the flaws on the game where going, oh yeah, we've seen this many times over the past decade and it's just been iterated on. How have you buggered this up so badly?
Yeah.
Because you've overhyped it as a AAA because people are going to pre-order it. You made The Witcher, people are going to order it. So it doesn't matter too much. And yeah, you announce it too early because you want to get those pre-orders in. Indie games, to a degree, don't do that. I've got a feeling the Hollow Knight Silksong, I've got a feeling might get a bit of a backlash.
Yeah.
Because I think people are well overhyping what that game is, which is a really, really, really good Metroidvania. I don't know what else they're expecting from Silksong apart from more of the same. I don't know what Silksong can do that's going to make it change the world. And I think a lot of people are expecting a world-changing game from the sequel.
Yeah, I think that, I agree. I think there's a lot of people who just pretty much want the same thing again, just more of it, more content, which is fine. It's not a criticism. Yep. But then there are people who kind of don't know what they want. And it's not just about games. Star Wars, the last 3 films really suffered from it.
Yeah.
In that, what people expected from it, their expectations were just wild. And it's like that with Silksong, I think. I didn't even I didn't really get on with Hollow Knight. I felt that the signposting wasn't very good, which is a real frustration because you spend ages just trawling back and forwards. And I didn't like the fact that you didn't really have any different weapons or abilities. It was kind of one, kind of all the way through. But I recognised it was a good game. But I think if they addressed the flaws that it had, that the first game had, then it could end up being really, really fabulous. But like you say, it's not. Even if they do that, it's still not going to be anything particularly new.
No, and it's brilliant. Don't get me wrong, Hollow Knight is brilliant. But I still don't think it's the best in class. I still think one of the best in class and doesn't get talked about enough these days is Shadow Complex. And I'll talk about that maybe another time. I know that, it's like comparing sort of like apples to oranges to a degree, because they are, even though they're in the same genre, they're completely different games. But I didn't find Hollow Knight to be the best Metroidvania I've ever played, which is how it's described. But I'm okay for other people to have that opinion. But again, we're building up an indie game. Just because one was successful, the next one, I can't see how it's going to fail in terms of reception, I think. I don't know. I hope not, because again, I'd like to see more games or more indie developers get pushed onto that higher level pedestal into what they can produce. Yeah, it does have some challenges coming. I think you're right.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you been playing any others, or shall I quickly jump onto my last one?
Yeah, go for your last one.
So the other game I've played is another indie game, and it's a 3D puzzle platformer called The Seed of Life. I don't know why I took this one, in all fairness. It kind of, when I first started playing it, it was going, this isn't my sort of game. I don't really do 3D platformers. I don't know why. I've just never really got on with them perfectly well. There's some that I can really enjoy, but I was like, I don't know why I took this, but I did. And overall, it's an interesting game. So you play someone called Cora, who is the last survivor of a world called Lumia. And it's a dying planet, and you need to save it by rekindling, you'll get this, the Seed of Life from the title.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a very, very simple 3D puzzle platformer. Basically, you kind of get on these like petal flower type things, and you'll see that there's like a pattern you need to match, and you turn them to try and match the pattern, and that's how you then unlock a bit and go further forward into the game and so on. And it's kind of like ironically mentioned in Hollow Knight, it was almost a perfect segue. It's somewhat of a Metroidvania light. So you kind of unlock bits to get to other areas. There's a lot of backtracking. Within this game.
Yeah.
And it starts off fairly linear in nature. So there's a lot of sort of like, okay, you follow it, and then you get to a more open environment, and then it kind of goes, off you go. It's up to you now. And the guidance within the game isn't very ADHD friendly. So what it expects from you as the player is to recognise where you've been and remember what the natural markers are within that area. So almost you're doing some actual orienteering, which is, if you want to do orienteering, that's fine. I don't want that in a puzzle platformer game, personally.
Yeah.
There's a reliance on, like, you kind of meet characters in the game and they tell you stuff, and you've got to remember that because it doesn't repeat. And it's really weird. So you've got to remember that. Now, for someone like me, I find myself just wandering around going, well, hopefully I'll come to something that will trigger something in the end.
Yeah.
And it got really frustrating for me. So it took me sort of like a few attempts to really sort of try and push into it, because I was getting frustrated and going, I'm not enjoying this game. I'm not enjoying it. There's something here, but I'm not enjoying it. And there's lots of secret areas and time. So there's some areas in it as well where you're there and there's like, it's timed. So you've got to beat this area within a certain amount of time. Otherwise you fail it and you need to go back. Now, that's not a problem in and of itself, except the checkpointing is bloody atrocious.
Oh, God.
So instead of getting to this bit where, okay, this timed bit starts, let's checkpoint. No, it checkpoints back to an actual dedicated checkpoint area. So you need to go all the way through to get there again to then repeat. And the timed areas are designed to increase the difficulty, which is fine. Go for that if you want to do it. But then I'm back to where my checkpoint is going, do I really want to travel all the way back there just to die again?
Yeah.
It's like when you've got a really bad job and you're getting on the bus at the start of the day and you're like, it takes me 45 minutes on the bus to get there. Then I'm there, I'm not enjoying it. Then it's 45 minutes. But you go, do I want to do that every day? That's how I was feeling in the game.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It's like, and there's no manual saves either. It's like it's all either auto-saving or at certain save points. Save points should not be a thing anymore. I get why they was a thing in the PS1 era, because, you know, you had to save it to a memory card. It was all on disc. There was no hard drives. I get why that was a thing and why we had password saves and stuff like that. In the modern day, when we're trying to make games more accessible, manual saves at any point should be there. Allow it as an option. If you want the challenge, turn off, you can turn off manual saving. You can only save at set points. Give that as an option. But for accessibility, you need manual saves. It's a must. And I'm saying this, I mean, I am really laying into this and I feel bad because it's well made. There's almost like, if you look at it as like a 4-part game, there's 4 different parts of this game. 2.5 parts are really good. But then the remaining 1.5 are so infuriating and so bad that it ruins the entire experience for me. And you know me, I don't like being horrible to an indie game. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. But this, for me, no, didn't do it. Did not do it at all.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, sounds like that's a fundamental break in what should make it, you know, successful in any way. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially as my time is limited with games at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just going to move straight through because, again, I don't want to keep you too long. But issues with my eyes and also my ADHD, and it's kind of all fitting in as to sort of like why I want to talk about this as briefly as possible.
Yeah.
So I'm due to go back to the specialists in just over a week from time of recording, and they will look at sort of like how my right eye is now going. Is the bleeding gone enough and they can do the laser surgery, or do I need another actual proper operation? And they'll likely certify me as partially sighted. But I need to know now what my future is looking like, excuse the pun. And they're still up in the air as to whether I'll do the operation on my left eye, because I'm completely blind in my left eye. But I mean, if you want to count 2% vision as having some sight, go ahead. But I'm completely blind in my left eye. So I get days where I can see enough and I will play games at that time. So I will try and fit them in because I enjoy doing it. The darker the game, the better, because I'm not having to worry about bright lights everywhere. So Garden Story, I had to kind of really pick my moments to play.
Sure. Yeah.
But Seed of Life and Deepest Chamber, dark. So I was able to get on with those to a degree. I think there's one of the reasons I think I picked up Seed of Life was I looked at the screenshots and they was all quite dark in nature.
Yeah.
Not again, I don't mean dark in mood, just like they were darker backgrounds and colours. It wasn't like whites and everything like that burning my retinas. And so, yeah, my time is limited with those, but a lot of my time is now spent thinking and sat there going, well, I can't watch TV properly, so I'll listen to a podcast or I'll just sit here. And an ADHD brain doesn't like just sitting. It has to do something. And all my brain's doing is going, if you wasn't an idiot and you didn't ruin your eyes, you could have played a game about now. You could have done this. By the way, I've got these really, really good ideas for, if you could see, you could do these. Do you know this video idea? Yeah, you could do this video idea. And do you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to tell you to go and note this down now. That would be sensible. You're going to remember when your eyes are better, that you had this really good idea, but you're not going to remember this good idea. And that's what I'm doing. I'm arguing with myself in my head, whilst also coming up with really good ideas for things, or what, in my head sounds like really good ideas. So it's like, I want to do, like, I've got in my head that I want to do, really push ahead with a piece on women's sports representation in video games.
Okay.
I really want to do an article or video about that. I really want to do a video or an article about ADHD accessibility in certain games, hence the reason Seed of Life. That's what prompted that. I'm going to forget that in 3 weeks when I get some decent vision back for a little bit. And it gets so frustrating. And now I'm rushing games. I'm rushing to play games. I'm going, I want to get this game played, because if I don't play it now and my eyes don't get worse, I'm never going to get to play it.
Sure.
So I'm going. So any little minor frustrations are really getting to me now. And it's just so frustrating that it's like, my physical disabilities are really messing with sort of like my ADHD. And just not knowing what to do with it now. And I'm not getting depressed. That's I think my depression is fully under control at the moment. But it's this limbo state. It's still this limbo state. Because if someone turned around to me tomorrow, like a specialist, and went, okay, look, there's no hope. Your vision's just going to get worse. You are actually just going to go blind. I'd be okay with that, because I could plan around that. But at the moment, I've still got this thing of, I don't know where it's going. It is meant to be getting better, but I'm still getting these bleeds.
Yeah.
So am I getting better? Can I continue to plan for what I want to do for the future? What jobs can I try and sort of like train for at the moment? That frustration then builds up, and that's where a lot of people, I don't think, understand ADHD. Is as you get these frustrations, instead of talking them away, you just go, you're so constantly going, what can I do to plan around that? And instead of going logically with it, you're constantly thinking and trying to work out things that you just get everything building up at once. And you just get generally frustrated with things, and frustrated with life. And again, it's different to that depression side of frustrated with life, where, you just got that, don't want to do anything, I'm depressed, I'm really suffering, don't want to see people, don't want to speak to people, that side of it. With ADHD, I'm kind of sitting there bouncing, going, I want to do something, I want to do this, I've got this good idea, I want to go out, I want to record this, I want to go. We went to a little theme park in Canvey Island last Sunday with Edith. Like it's aimed for kids like 4 to 9 years old. It's just for something for Edith to do.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there because I couldn't do anything. As I walk around, my eyes get worse during the day. If I sit there all day, they're fine. Not fine, but they're okay. They're usable. I can watch a bit of TV. I can play some games. As soon as I get up and move around, go shopping, go out, they get messed up. And so I want to do these things. I want to spend time. But then I'm saying, I shouldn't come out. I don't think I can come out because it's not fair. But then it sounds like I don't want to be out. I do want to be out. I want to be out. I want to be doing things. I want to work. I say work. I don't think everyone should be forced to work unless it's important. But enough of that. I want to be working. I want to work in mental health. Or I want to, do stuff with mental health gaming and really push forward with that. But I feel like this has stalled for the past 6 months whilst my health's been sort of all over the shop. And every little time it looks like that, I now I get another setback. Yeah, I'm sitting there going, I want to do something, I want to go out. No, I can't. I've got to sit here. So I sit here and I focus fully on sitting there. It's really weird to focus on just sitting and staying still and being lazy. Seems like it shouldn't be something that's hard, but it's really hard. It's really, really hard when all you're doing is going, I want to go sit at my computer and play a game, or I want to get the Switch, or I want to go for a walk, I want to go to town for a coffee. Yeah. But I can't, because going to town for a coffee will mean that for the rest of that evening, I'm blind. Yes. And I don't know, I'm rattling on, but basically that's generally what my days are like in my head. Yeah. Only, extend that by 10 hours. And it's so frustrating. I said, for anyone, if they are, I'm not at a place where I'm going, do you know what, sod it, I wish I weren't here. I'm actually still very positive and stuff like that. But it's the frustrations. And if I do get better, or even if I goes the other way, I think that's something I want to do. I want to help other people who struggle with coming to terms with being in that limbo stage of a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because I think that's often overlooked.
I agree. Yes, definitely. Must be incredibly frustrating. You can't, dial back one thing, dial up another, and work out what your future's going to be, or even start to shape it properly, like you say, and it's just waiting on that diagnosis, which is complete limbo. So, yeah, God, yeah, can imagine. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm sat here at the computer recording, and I can see enough that I'm going, do you know what? I could probably play a game today.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at it going, but I've already sat here for an hour or so. That's going to do some damage in it. So maybe I shouldn't. And that's when we finish recording, that debate is going to rage in my head for the next hour or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though I know the logical answer is take a break from the computer, my debate is going, yeah, you should. But if your eyes are going to get bad anyway later, you might as well play a game. But then going, but playing the game might make them worse, so you shouldn't. But if they're... And that is constantly going. And without a Stu there to go, just calm down, take a break from yourself for a second, you just continue doing that in your head. And it's so... And again, I think this is one of my ideas I've had as well. I'm going to say this because I want it because it's recorded, so you can always point me back, or someone can always point me back to this episode if Stu doesn't cut it out. He does that all the time. All my good ideas he cuts out, honestly. All the good bits. All the good bits. All my good bits
Fair enough.
are cut out.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
But I want to do more to-camera or voice work just about ADHD, just more about what the brain is doing, what an ADHD brain is doing. Not talk about it and go, an ADHD person struggles to get places on time, or an ADHD person has to prepare to leave a lot earlier than someone else with a normally functioning brain has to. People hear that all the time, but what does that actually mean? What's actually going through the brain at the time? So I want to be, when I do that, is to do something, whether it's the camera, whether it's just voice work or something like that, where I'm going, right, so I've got to go out, I've got to be somewhere by 3 p.m. Right, I'm actually working this out now. That it's 12 p.m. It's 12 p.m. the day before. I'm now planning in my head what I'm going to be doing for the next, God knows how many hours. Does what time I go to bed matter? Do I make sure I wake up in time? When I have my breakfast, my shower, I've got to make sure. And that's all going through my head. But you can't explain that in a normal, logical way. So I want to do stuff, a series that goes, what's actually in my ADHD head at any time.
I would highly recommend, and it's when you say it like that, it sounds like it's really hard. Where do I go to do that, and how do I structure it? But there's a lot of TikTokers who do similar things, and yeah, I think that would be where you could fit in, and especially if you brought in the whole gaming thing into it, because there's certainly following the algorithms that I have on TikTok, there aren't very many people either talking about games or talking about them in any kind of a depth. It tends to be the Twitch community coming across and talking about what they play, and that's more about experiential games, and it's very present focused, and you can bring in the indie stuff, you bring in your knowledge of retro games, you can all of that sort of stuff as well, and link it to the ADHD. I think it might be a really good platform for you.
Yeah, I've never really. This is where I'm getting old, Stu. This is how I know I'm getting old. I don't get TikTok.
Well, it is just like that. So people the way that it's turned into is it's often people just talking to camera about their lives. Well, that's certainly, that's what I get on my algorithm. I know that there's people who do, loads of dancing routines and stuff, but
that's what I thought it was. People who like dancing and.
No, I've lost all of that, unfortunately. I kind of miss it, but
I'll dance. No, I won't. I can't dance, and I won't.
Please
dance.
don't do that.
It's my one rule in life. Don't.
It would
dance.
just be you like river dancing and then falling backwards out of your window.
Not a chance. No way. I don't dance for anyone. I won't. I've like my son's asked. This is really bad, isn't it? My son's asked me to dance at places. I will not dance. If there's anyone potentially looking at me, I will not dance. I cannot do it.
Fair play. So don't do any dancing on the TikTok. But yeah, no, a lot of it is people just talking about their lives and lives that other people don't normally have a view into, you know, which is what you want to do. You want to reach and extend the audience that's talking about mental health and talking about ADHD. So yeah, look into it. Give it a go.
Fair enough. So I think what we should say now, because I've gone on for a bit, and Stu just talks way too much.
I do.
Way too much.
Do I? Yeah.
Jesus, I know. But instead of complaining about it, all I'm going to say is dry your eyes, mate.
Oh, nice. Our long callback. That was perfection. I can just imagine everyone at home doing that Antonio Banderas meme of putting the hand to the face in ecstasy at how good that was. That's class.
Yeah, that had been literally how I hadn't said that before, because that's been there right at my front bit of my brain, trying to escape out the entire show.
I can just imagine that. Yeah, you going, now I'm going to talk about such a... Well, dry your eyes, mate.
Yeah, like some kind of weird Tourette.
Yeah. Oh dear. So yes, if you've recovered from Brad's humour and me talking far too much, then you can go off and look at some of our other content. There's plenty of reviews, especially on the website. There's stuff on YouTube, very visible on Twitter, so follow us on all the socials. And for the next week and for forever, stay safe and stay sane.